Mark Cannizzaro of the New York Post, our columnist here, joins us now. And Mark, you were there for Robert Saleh when he was talking about new Jets offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett. What do you make of the hire?
Well, I always take this from the Jets fans' perspective, Ryan, and I'm sure Jet fans are shaking their heads given what took place with Nate Hackett in Denver. Obviously, it was a messy season to be nice in his first season with the first head coaching job, I should say, and he also doesn't come here with a record of really good offenses in his previous stops, Buffalo, Jacksonville, where he was, he was the play caller. It's hard to count Green Bay where he was from 2019 to 21 because he was obviously, Matt LaFleur was the play caller there. But I tried to make the point in the column here that I just wrote that you got to give this guy a chance for a few reasons. For starters, you need to look at the quarterbacks that he worked with in Buffalo and in Jacksonville. EJ Manuel in Buffalo, Kyle Orton for a spell, and Blake Bortles in Jacksonville. He helped take Blake Bortles to an AFC Championship game in 2017 season. They were ranked fifth in points scored and sixth in overall offense that year. So you got to throw him a couple of bones. Obviously, Robert Saleh today spoke about recency bias, and you have to kind of, in his words, be disciplined enough to look past recency bias, which is true. You do have to do that. But on the surface, this does not look like a very sexy hire by the Jets. But you have to also look at the fact that they didn't have a lot of choices here. This is a regime, a Saleh regime that is under, in my opinion, this has not been stated publicly by Woody Johnson, but I think that there is at least a tacit, get to the playoffs or else edict for 2023. You're also looking at a team that doesn't have a quarterback. They've got Zach Wilson's the only one under contract right now, who's obviously, we know what he's done in 2 years. And possibly this is a piece to a puzzle that potentially lands the Jets Aaron Rodgers. That's cart before horses. But at the very least, Hackett is very tight with Rodgers from his couple of years in Green Bay. And listen, we don't know whether Rodgers wants to play anymore. If he does, if he wants to play and finish it out in Green Bay, or if he wants to be traded. And if he does want to be traded, if he wants to come to the Jets. We don't know any of these things. But if Nathaniel Hackett is a piece to that puzzle, I think all Jet fans will forget the bad optics that they're staring at today with this hire.
And obviously, you listened to Robert Saleh's comments today about Nathaniel Hackett and saying, like you said, forget about the recency bias. That's on his resume. He has to embrace it. He has to take that on. When you look at the possible veteran QBs that Robert Saleh addressed today, said we are absolutely going to be looking at a multitude of veteran quarterbacks. We didn't talk specifics with Nathaniel Hackett when we interviewed him. When you look at this now, who are some of the names besides Aaron Rodgers that you could see the Jets possibly pursuing this offseason?
I'm going to take the first part of that question, Ryan. I know Robert said that they didn't discuss the quarterback situation or what quarterbacks they may pursue. And with all due respect to Robert, and I have very much respect for Robert. I do not believe that for 1 second. I mean, how in the world is Nate Hackett taking this job when he has years left on his Denver contract? By the way, he could have sat around and done nothing for 3 years or so. In an uncertain situation, to take this job, as I mentioned before, a potentially, hopefully not, but potentially shaky situation with the coaching regime if they don't do well in 23. How in the world are they not? And oh, by the way, his relationship with Aaron Rodgers. How are they not discussing a potential quarterback? I can't believe that. All due respect to Robert, I think Robert is just trying to tamp that talk down as much as he could, because even prior to this hire, as you know, there's been some momentum building with some reports. Adam Schefter, out of ESPN, for starters, just talking about the fact that Rodgers may well want to be traded, and so there's been some momentum, Rodgers to the Jets, and then this hire stokes that fire, of course. But getting back to your original rest of part of your question there, I think that there's an obvious group of quarterbacks out there, beginning with Jimmy Garoppolo, who has played in the West Coast system, which, oh, by the way, Hackett coaches. Um, you got Derek Carr, who I respect as a pretty good player. I don't really know what to think of him. He's got a significantly losing record, which is different than the significantly winning record that Jimmy G has. And you throw in, although I don't think it would be a very popular signing, potential signing, but Baker Mayfield is a guy that's out there who's won some games in this league, is certainly a more competent quarterback than anybody the Jets have on their roster or had on their roster last year. So those are some guys that would be out there for the Jets to pursue. Um, Carr would come with some sort of compensation situation because he's still property of the Raiders, even though the Raiders do not have a lot of uh, leverage because it's pretty clear that they don't want him back. So, but Jets would have to give up something there. Obviously, Rodgers, that's going to cost the Jets a lot in terms of probably a couple first round picks and a lot of money. But Woody Johnson has said from the start that money's not an object here. So that's good news to Jets fans. There's a lot of dominoes that need to fall, and I think Rodgers is probably the first one. Everybody's going to sit back and wait and see what he does. And then you got Jimmy G out there, and you got Carr out there, and Baker's probably a significant fallback option.
You see a commitment here from Saleh and Douglas now also to the run game when you see them hiring former Titans offensive line coach Keith Carter. And then you also hear Robert Saleh speak again today about we're going to build, attack the offensive line and restructure that as well. My last question here would be, if it doesn't work out with Aaron Rodgers, do you see it potentially working out well with a Carr or Jimmy G if they were to bring those guys in? Do you see the Jets possibly making the playoffs if they were to get someone else besides Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback?
I would say this, Ryan. First of all, the answer is yes to that question. All eggs are not in the Aaron Rodgers basket because that's probably the most volatile and probably the least likely of all things to happen and most difficult to make happen. But in answer to your question, if the Jets bring in either Garoppolo or Derek Carr and they have the same kind of defense they had last year, and they improve the offensive line, which had issues really this year because of injury. I would be shocked if they don't make the playoffs, and I don't think I think that's a very, very bad coaching job if they don't make the playoffs. Not to throw so much pressure on Saleh and company, but I mean, if the Jets had either Carr or Garoppolo this year, they would have been in the playoffs. I mean, obviously we can't say that for certain, but I mean, if we all saw what we saw, we saw a team that had one of the best defenses in the league all year long, and a team that struggled to score touchdowns. They didn't score a single touchdown in the last 3 games of the year. You can't win a football game that way. I don't care if you have the '86 Bears defense with you. So, yeah, in answer to your question, if they have either of those two guys, other uh, than Rodgers, yeah, they damn well should be in the playoffs next year. Absolutely.